Good morning. It is Saturday, October 3rd, and today when I woke up, which was like 15 minutes ago if you can't tell, the first thing I did was go to a computer and check the status of the Lisbon Treaty. If you hadn't heard, the Irish people voted in a referendum for the second time yesterday on the Lisbon Treaty. Now, most of you probably don't know what the Lisbon Treaty was, or is. Basically, back around 2005 or 2006, the European Union wanted a new constitution, and they decided to put up the constitution for a referendum because that was what was required. And EU countries started voting it down. France voted it down. Holland voted it down. Why were these European countries voting down a new EU constitution? They were doing so because this constitution was going to further erode the sovereignty of individual European nations and give more power to this centralized European superstate called the EU. And the European people don't like that. Including, especially Eastern Europeans, who believe that a centralized European state, which will be located in Brussels, is going to favor Western Europe. But even Western Europeans were voting this treaty down because they're becoming increasingly concerned that the EU is turning into some kind of monster that just wants more and more power, and they're becoming very protective of their national sovereignty, as they should be. So anyway, the Constitution couldn't go through, and the European leaders decided to take the Constitution and make it into a treaty. And they said, well, it's a treaty between the European nations, so therefore we don't need Europeans to vote on it. It's not, it's nothing more than a treaty. There doesn't need to be any referendums on it. It was the same Constitution that the French people voted down, and the Holland people voted down, and the British would have voted down if they were given a referendum, and probably every other country. So they redesigned it and called it the Lisbon Treaty, and did it very stealthily, but it was the same wording as the EU Constitution. Anyway, the European nations did not have a referendum on it. And one after another, the national legislatures in each country passed the treaty without the consent of the people who didn't want it. Ireland was an exception. Ireland's constitution requires that a treaty like this be held for a national referendum. And last year, despite staunch opposition from EU leaders who knew that a referendum would lead to the defeat of the Lisbon Treaty, the Irish people held a referendum and voted no to the Lisbon Treaty. Now that should have killed the Lisbon Treaty right there, because the Lisbon Treaty required ratification from every European state. The Irish people said no, so therefore it should have been dead. And it should have been up for referendum in other countries as well. But even if it wasn't, the Irish people said no, so it should have been dead. Well, the European Union leaders said, no, that doesn't work. We are going to have a second referendum. So what they did was they launched a major propaganda campaign, spent millions upon millions of dollars, and really pushed the yes side. And the second referendum happened yesterday, and the Irish people voted yes. So what does the Lisbon Treaty do? Like I said, it centralizes EU power. Roughly 90 to 95% of the laws in each individual European country are now going to be voted, are now going to be decided in Brussels, not in the individual countries. So that part of sovereignty has been lost. It's going to create a new EU Council that is going to consist of unelected members completely unelected, and then it's going to have an unelected president of Europe. Okay, speculation is that the first president of Europe is probably going to be Tony Blair. So essentially, Tony Blair has accomplished what Caesar failed to accomplish, what Hitler failed to accomplish, what Napoleon failed to accomplish, and that is to conquer Europe. There's going to be a president of Europe, unelected, period. Where all the laws in each country are going to be decided in Brussels, hundreds, and for some countries, thousands of miles away, by unelected officials or by distantly elected officials. This is tyranny, people. All right, Europe has been taken over. All right, and they've done it very stealthily, and the world has just watched, stood by and watched as it's happened. But they've done it. This is a complete takeover by the EU. Ireland, what upsets me the most, and it almost makes me want to cry, to be honest with you. I mean, this really makes me sick. It makes me want to throw up. Ireland, after centuries and centuries of fighting for their independence and their freedom, yesterday in a vote just voluntarily gave it up. Just surrendered it to this super state. I don't know why they would do that. Because that's what's happened here. I mean, what a slap in the face to the Irish patriots who fought for Irish independence for centuries upon centuries. What a slap in the face. I mean, I don't know. I've been to Europe several times in the last few years. I love traveling through Europe. It's one of my favorite places to visit, but anybody who travels to Europe can tell you that the EU has increasingly strengthened its power. I mean, you see the EU flag everywhere. You don't see any national flags. I mean, the EU has turned into an absolute Leviathan superstate, and Ireland just gave it up. The rest of Europe was counting on Ireland to stand strong and vote no against this treaty for a second time, and they voted yes, unfortunately. I mean, this is people, this is very undemocratic. It's corrupt. A week before the Lisbon Treaty vote, one of the heads of the EU came to Europe came to Ireland and gave a bunch of union workers a huge package to basically buy them off. I mean, this is corrupt. It's undemocratic. It's scary, and it really bothers me, because I know I'm not European, but Europe has stood for freedom and democracy and all these things, along with the United States, for a long time. That's where the Enlightenment ideals came from, was Europe. John Locke, Europe. Voltaire, Europe. Montesquieu, Europe. And look what happened. Look what's happened. Europe has been taken over by undemocratic, totalitarian means. So that leaves the United States. I mean, and where are we headed as the United States? We're headed in the same direction, people. We really are. This federal government is out of control right now. I mean, it just is. It's never been as powerful as it's been today. Why do people trust a centralized state so much? All throughout history, centralized governments have been corrupt, have killed millions of people. I mean, why do we trust centralized power? This is not good. This is not good for Europe. It's not good for the United States. And I mean, we still have a chance in the United States to put a stop of all this to all of this. Unfortunately, Europe has lost their chance. It appears. But we still have a fighting chance in America, and we really have to. This is serious, people. We are living in very serious times right now. This is not a game. We're losing a lot. We are potentially losing a lot of freedoms, and we need to stand up and stop this before it gets too late. Anyway, I went way longer than I thought I was going to, but this is an emotional issue for me, so I had to. Anyway, I'll see you guys later. Bye.